Season 25 ends with The Chosen. What happens when you are selected to have special powers? We're going to take a look at a couple stories that involve that theme. First off, a young woman walking around her college campus realizes that she is special, but not in the way that she thought she was. And then we travel to Finland to take a look at the story of a young man hanging outside a house when all of a sudden he realizes that he is special as well, but not the way he wants to be. And then finally, we meet a young man who believes that he was abducted by aliens, and they chose him to be the ruler over all humanity. What happens when extraterrestrial life gives you the power of a god? But the aliens can also turn you into Steve Urkel. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. I hope you guys have some cool plans for the weekend. I am going to go see the Phantom Menace re-release. I know I said that last week, but it's been super busy. Everything's been really busy around here the past month, but I'm taking a 2-week break from the show. So on one of those days, I will go see the Phantom Menace in the movie theaters. There's some other movie coming out that I want to see too. I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't remember. I want to see that new A Quiet Place movie. I did not like the second one. The second one was... I actually didn't really like the first one. Now that I think about it, the first one, it was kind of a letdown. The second one I didn't like at all. But clearly the third one in a franchise of 2 movies I didn't care for, the third one will be fantastic. I'll check it out. I vote The Silence. If you guys haven't seen The Silence on Netflix, that movie got a lot of internet hate, and I think most of it was astroturfed. That movie's really good. The Silence is actually genuinely a good disaster film, but it's the same premise. It's these monsters that attack you when you make noise. But someone who attacks people, whether or not they make noise, a true predator among men. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for our newest Patreon supporter, Ipsy. Woohoo, yeah, wee! Walking on in with a bow and a knife, ready to hunt their fellow men. Ipsy, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's just Y-S-P-E. Maybe it's like apocalypse. Maybe it's Ips. I emailed Ips back and I said, hey, how do you pronounce your name? Never got a response. We got to record the episode. Ips, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially like Ips did, that's fine. It really, really is. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. Also, if you guys, we're getting ready to do a big sticker push. If you guys haven't received a sticker yet, you should be getting it shortly. I haven't sent any out in a long time. There was this huge thing about me losing stamps. I can't find my stamp. I know this is thrilling podcasting. You're like, wow, Jason lost stamps. That's on par with people getting abducted by aliens. That's just as interesting. I can't find my stamps. So if you haven't got a sticker, if you haven't gotten a sticker ever, you've been like supporting the Patreon for a while, stickers are leaving shortly. Also, I do email you guys using the Patreon email. So check there if you've never got any communication from me about stickers and all that stuff, or how to pronounce your name. That's where I do most of the messaging for that. Ips. We'll call you Ipsy. I think that works. Ipsy, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you... What vehicle have we not used a lot this? I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the Dead Rabbit Dragster. Is that a vehicle? Dead Rabbit Dragster. Everyone hop on board. It's like one of those old monster cars with the big old wheels and the rat man poking out of it. You're like, Jason, what? I don't know what you're talking about. You know those old drawings, those old comic book drawings? Like, Rob Zombie was always into it. It's just like a big wheel in the back and a little wheel in the front and a giant mouse sticking out of it. You're like, Jay, I have no idea what you're talking about. The Dead Rabbit Dragster. It's that vehicle that I'm describing. Ipsy, go ahead and grab the keys for this. Push the rat to the other side. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Ipsy, drive us all the way out to college. Driving off on the Dead Rabbit Dragster, headed out to college. I hope you guys brought your book bags, your Letterman jackets, because we're headed back to school. And we're walking around this campus. Park the rat car in the parking lot. Ipsy, catch up to us. Walking around this campus, we're about to meet this young girl named Sarah. It's not a real name. That's the name that we'll give her. And on this particular day, it's a beautiful sunny day. Walking across the quad. She's leaving one class, headed out to the other. And she notices that day there's a guy who's always following her. Colleges, big place, right? Lots of people. Maybe he has the same class as she does. She's never seen him before. Maybe there's a new class. Maybe he's a transfer student. Maybe he's heading in the other direction, food court or whatever. She doesn't pay it too much mind. She definitely gets a little wrinkle in her brain. She goes, that guy, he's fairly close to me. And he's walking behind me. Oh well, big campus, lots of people. But then, when that class is over and she's walking to the next class, she's walking and she starts to see him again, and he seems to be hovering around her. He seems to be always around her, and she said it kind of no closer or further than 10 feet away. She walks to her next class, he's nearby. She's taking economics or something super boring like that. If you buy a can of beans for 89 cents and you sell it for $1, that's economics. You made 11 cents. And she's all taking notes. She's like, oh, that's fascinating. Economics. Buy low, sell high, the teacher says. She's like, don't go so fast, teach. Buy low. She leaves economics. She's walking to her next class. The dude's there. Dude's walking by her. And at a certain point, you'd get a little paranoid. That's kind of where she's at. She goes to her theater class, and the teacher's all, to be or not to be? That is the question. Do we suffer the slings and arrows? And it's kind of forgets what the rest of it is. Like the rest of us, we're like, I don't know the rest of it. She's like, to be or not to be? That's an interesting question. I'm writing it down. She leaves that class. She's walking to her cooking class. Sure enough, he's following her again. She gets in there, and she's like, how do I make this sauce? And the teacher's like, Mamma mia. Just put a bunch of tomatoes in there and squish them. Squish them up in that pot. She's like squishing them, and the teacher's like, oh, yes, yummy. He's disgusting. You're like, hey, teach, I know that tomatoes are a base of a sauce, but shouldn't we put any spices in here? No, I have a sensitive tongue. Tomato juice is what I love. Feed me. Okay. Didn't learn much in that class, and then she leaves that class, and this guy is following her, so then she goes to her mime class. You're like, Jason, we get it. This guy is everywhere. You don't have to list her entire syllabus. He's everywhere. Wherever she goes on this particular day, he's always behind her. Now it's time for lunch. She's walking, and this dude is just like, at a certain point, you wouldn't notice it at first. You might notice it, but not really think anything of it. But after hours of this, he's all walking behind you. He's dressed up like a mime. You're like, oh man, he is in that class. I remember that. There was an invisible box around me. He couldn't get closer. She's walking through the quad, and he's walking around 10 feet away from her. And finally, she turns around. She goes, dude, do you need help with something? She probably said it a little bit nicer than most of us would. But she's like, do you need help with something? And he says, my mother died recently. And her ghost is attached to you. So I miss my mom, and I just want to be near her. So I was wondering if I could hang out with you for a bit, because I really, really miss my mom. Well, this completely freaked Sarah out. Yeah, and I think it would most of us. It freaked Sarah out, and she ran away. It's interesting because, like, what would you do in that situation? Because here's the really interesting thing about the paranormal. When we talk about it in a vacuum, it's... I'm trying to think of the right word for it. Like, let's say that you do believe that aliens exist. You go, I don't know whether or not they abduct people, but I do believe aliens exist, and I like hearing stories about alien abduction. Or you go, hey, I believe ghosts exist, and I've actually had an encounter. I grew up in a haunted house. Growing up in the haunted house is in the past. You remember when you were a little kid, you were sitting there, and a little girl peeked her head out from your closet and says, "Fancy a cup of tea with me, governor?" And you're like, oh. That was the only ghost experience you ever had. Ever since then, you've made sure every room you've ever been in didn't have a closet. But you'd be like, yeah, when I was a little kid, I saw a ghost. I believe in aliens, da-da-da-da-da. That's all very not, put it this way, it's not very dead momish. If you believe in the paranormal, there is something to that. But when somebody comes up to you and says, my dead mother's ghost is attached to you, can I hang out with you for a bit because I want to be with my mom? That sounds psychotic. Which is really, really interesting part of the paranormal. I call it the leprechaun paradox. We talk about it on the show. Your coworker came to work tomorrow and said, I think my house is haunted. I saw a ghost in my bedroom. You'd go, wow, that's crazy. That's super creepy. What are you going to do about it? If your coworker came and said, I think I caught a leprechaun. When I walked home, there was a box tipped over, and I heard a little voice going, begotten, begotten, I'll give you my gold if you flip over the box. You'd be like, my friend's nuts. My friend is nuts. Leprechauns don't exist. Although in the world of paranormal, both are possible. I think that's a valid reaction for Sarah to have. It's really, really creepy. This guy could have been psychotic. He could have been having a serious mental breakdown, and in that case, you would want to help him with exposing yourself to the least amount of danger. Maybe go to, hey, yeah, by the way, your mom's ghost is telling me to take you to the security office or to the nurse's office or wherever, and she wants you to speak to a professional. He's like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. Thanks, Mom. But it could have actually been his mom as well. Because in the world of paranormal, we don't know. It's not like there's not a other science out there that mimics insanity. There's no telescope scientists, guys, astronomers, who every so often is like, oh man, I was looking through the telescope yesterday. I was looking at the Big Dipper. The moon winked at me as I was looking at it through the telescope. They're like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, it's super crazy. And then I heard these voices telling me to murder all of you. The man on the moon wants me to kill all of you. There's no other science that... That's an extreme example, but you know what I mean? There's no one's an archaeologist, and they're digging up bones, and they're like, what'd you say, bone? And they hold it up to their ear, and they're like, Mom? This is my mom's bone. You're like, sir, we're in Egypt. We've dug 1,000 feet underground. Your mother's alive. It's like, I don't know. This kind of feels like my mom. I'm going to hold this bone up to my face. Yeah, this is my mom's thigh bone. I know it anywhere. You'd be like, what? You would be medically treated in any other science if you started saying I was hearing voices, or I think my dead mom's in the beaker. You're a chemist. You're like, oh, no, don't mix those chemicals up. My mom's in there. And they're like, what? No, I know that's a base. But my mom, I think she's this acid. I think she's this solution. Don't pour my mom in there. In the paranormal sciences, we do have to admit that a lot of it does look, not all of it, but a lot of it does look like mental illness. So was this actually his mother's spirit? Sarah did the safest thing. She left the area, but she also says this. She goes, I am a skeptic, but it's not that she's never had any paranormal experiences. She posted, because this story happened just really recent in 2024. Earlier this year, she said that she was at home and she heard a rustling in her closet. And I think she shares a place with her husband. Yeah, when her and her husband were gone one day, when they came back, there was a table that always had 3 chairs on each side of the table. When they came back, one of the chairs was moved to the head of the table. And she says also, she had this weird feeling walking by one of the doors of her place recently, and it was really freaking her out. She actually asked her husband, there's something wrong with that door. Do you guys ever feel weird around me? He's like, no, what are you talking about? It's totally fine. You're probably just, I don't know, hallucinating. Probably just having one of those normal college-age hallucinations kids are talking about on TikTok. The husband says, listen, there's nothing wrong with this door. And he walks over and he grabs the doorknob. And she says the doorknob, quote, exploded off of the door. I wasn't there, obviously, but from what it sounds like, he turns the doorknob and all of the mechanisms sprang loose. The lock and the knob and everything just kind of fell out of the door and skidded across the floor. He didn't get his hands blown off. Either way, explosion or just everything falling to pieces in your hands in a door you already feel uneasy about, it's not nothing. You know, she felt a weird feeling and then the door knob basically stops working. Everything just kind of falls off onto the ground. The guts are all over the floor. And she says, quote, I feel like there's a presence in our house and I can't tell if it's evil or just the jokester. But all 3 occurrences run shivers. What was the second occurrence? Probably wasn't notable. But all 3 occurrences run shivers down my spine just thinking about it. Because I only have... Oh, the hangers rustling in the closet. Yeah. That's not... If I heard that, I wouldn't necessarily think it was a ghost. These were posted online by someone going by the name Indigo Moonbeam 710. It's interesting because that activity in their home predated the mother, predated the story of the mother by a couple of weeks. If I remember correctly, like 6-8 weeks max. So she's a skeptic, and those are pretty... Anytime things are getting moved around in your house, a lot of people can say, well, you know, that's not too bad. That actually takes a pretty powerful spirit to physically move items. And the heavier... The doorknob falling off, that's actually the thing. I mean, unless it actually exploded. If that's what's smashes into the wall. My hand, my beautiful hand. It's a mangled stump. I think that the doorknob falling off is probably the least notable. And then the hangers rustling in the closet. I mean, there could be a couple different things. A little rat dancing because he got kicked out of his car. He had to go somewhere. The chairs moving, right? A kitchen chair moving around or a dining room chair moving around takes a lot of strength for a spirit. Is that connected to the son seeing his dead mother attached to her? Is the ghost in their home this dude's mom? Because she didn't get any information from him. What if he said, yeah, we grew up in this home, and she's describing the same place, and she always sat at the front of the table. She didn't get any information from him. She ran away, which, again, I don't fault her. That is really creepy. Someone walked up to you and started talking about ghosts out of the blue. I mean, I would listen, because that's kind of what I do. But if they were saying that the ghost, his favorite ghost, his mom, is attached to me, that is going to put up my defenses. That's going to make me a little concerned for my safety. So it's a really interesting story as far as that goes, but it may not be over. His mother may be the one who's actually haunting this home, and I honestly think that might be the best outcome. There's another version of this story where she is attracting a whole cacophony of spirits, a traveling group. Something's happening at this home, and it's not just the mom. There may be multiple spirits. This might be not necessarily a haunted home, but a vortex. And you might get dogpiled on by these spirits. We don't know. There's really not enough information to go off of. But I think it's an interesting story as far as what would you do in that case. It's so different than someone saying, oh, I know there's ghosts. After my grandma died, I smelt the smell of her perfume in our house. I mean, that's a lovely ghost story. I'm not mocking those, but you're like, wow, that's fascinating. Now, if they said, I smell it on you now you smell like my dead grandmother, and I'm going to follow you around because I love the smell of my dead grandmother. Now it's become very personal, and you would question the sanity of the person telling the second version of the story, saying, now it's on you. Someone tells you the first story, you're like, oh, that's a beautiful story. Your grandmother was letting you know that she's at peace, that she's not gone. She's just somewhere else. The other one, you feel like it's targeted. Not the ghost. You don't feel a threat from the ghost. You question the sanity of the person you're talking to. Which, again, you don't see in other sciences. Interesting story. She has this ability to attract this dude's dead mom. She doesn't want it. And you would be, I think, in a lot of ways reluctant to not have your defenses up when you're walking around college now. That probably did ruin the freedom and safety she may feel just walking around a crowded college campus, because now, for all she knows, this guy's going to follow her the rest of the semester. But he may have learned he just needs to be farther away, but still following her. And if he really wants to talk to his mom, he still wants to be around his mom, and she's avoiding him, he only has one choice: to kidnap this girl, to kidnap Sarah. Which, in his view, would make sense, right? That's his mother. His dead mother's attached to this girl, and I want to talk to my mom, but she ran away from me, so I have to take this girl. I have to kidnap Sarah. So it's a very dangerous story as well. I'm not advocating the guy who thinks that is listening to this podcast. He's like, a kidnapping, you say? I hadn't thought of that. Thanks, Dead Rabbit Radio. Ipsy, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. We're going to go ahead and leave behind this college. Why don't you drive us all the way out to Finland? Driving all the way out to Finland. We got on our coats, our big old furry coats to go out to Finland, and furry boots. We look like little ice climbers as we're headed out to Finland. It's August 1st, 1998. Specifically, we're headed to Kuusamo, Finland. How do I tell time with this? This is late. It's 11:30 p.m. It's pretty late at night. And we're at a summer cottage, because technically August is the summer, but I don't know how hot the summers get in Finland. I assume it's always like super cold over there. So we're wearing our ice climber gear. We got on our little gloves, little furry gloves, little masks. We're walking around this summer cottage. Everyone else is wearing like khaki shorts and a polo. We're all walking on little line. We're about to meet this guy. His name is Pekka. Him and his girl, this is Pekka's house. Him and his girl says, dude, you know what, honey? I think we should invite my friend Timu. Dude, Timu's dope. And Pekka's girlfriend was like, oh yeah, Timu's pretty cool. And Pekka's like, yeah, dude, Timu has it going on. He's super awesome. And in a lot of ways, I like him better than you, honey. She's like, what? Hey, Timu, why don't you get your girl and we can hang out at the summer cottage? And Timu's like, yeah, dude, that'll be super dope. Let's go. Let's do this. So they do. They're hanging out at this summer cottage. It's an August night in 1998. Pekka, you're just having fun hanging out with the boys and the girls in this case. And eventually Pekka goes, you know what, I need to smoke. I need to go smoke a cigarette. So he walks out onto the terrace and he's, oh yeah, that's the stuff. Just enjoying the night air, when all of a sudden he realizes that Timu is standing right next to him. And Pekka's like, whoa, bro, like some Ninja Turtle or something. I didn't even hear you come out, man. Hey, Timu, remember last year when we were hanging out at this cottage in winter time, a bunch of snowflakes, Finnish snowflakes falling from the sky? Yeah, man, it's good stuff. I like that. And Pekka keeps talking, and Timu's not responding. He's just standing there. And Pekka's like, yo, bro, what's up? And he turns, and he looks, and Pekka goes, you're not Timu. He's standing there looking at a perfect look-alike of his friend Teemu. But the reason why Pekka knows this isn't actually Teemu, it's almost like this. It's two things. One, he gets this feeling that this is not his close friend. It's almost like this instinctive, subconscious knowledge that the person standing next to him, even though it looks exactly like his friend, is not his friend. That's hint one. Hint two, when Pekka turns and he looks inside the cottage, he sees Teemu and the two girls just hanging out talking in the cottage. So he has both real-world evidence and a gut feeling that this is not his friend. And Pekka's like, yo, who are you, dude? Like, how did you assume the shape of my friend? What's going on? And this doppelganger looks at Pekka and says, you know very well who I am, Pekka. Pekka's just staring. Cold night air nipping at his nose. A lit cigarette slowly burning away in his fingertips. Pekka's looking at this version of Teemu and he realizes this Teemu's jaw is starting to fall off. He compared it to like a wax mannequin of his friend slowly melt. The face just started to get distorted. And Teemu, this version, begins to contort his face. And he gets the jaw back into place. Pekka says, I've never been a fan of UFOs. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't float my boat. However, if aliens exist, Pekka thought, I'm looking at one right now. He realizes that it's not his friend, and it's not human either. It's not a spirit. It's not a shapeshifter. It's not something from our planet. This is an alien life. And at that point, Pekka starts to get queasy. Almost like the Uncanny Valley. When we look at something that's so realistic, but it's not quite human, it makes us feel uncomfortable. It actually can make you nauseous. Pekka is getting upset. He's getting a little scared, and he keeps saying, who are you? Who are you? Or what are you? What's going on? Who are you? The Teemu clone really just sidesteps the question and says, you are one of us, Pekka. You are chosen. Pekka starts to walk inside, and then he stops, and he says, why me? The alien version of Teemu says, you are a good man. Pekka's standing there, and he goes, how long did the journey last? 11 months, Teemu says. And Pekka walks back inside the party. Teemu and the two girls, they realized something was off with Pekka, like, right away. The growing urine stain in his pants, he's like, oh, well, yeah, I don't want to talk about it, he says. I don't want to talk about the horrific vision of you, my friend, that I saw out there. I don't want to talk about it at all. And they could tell something had happened. He was bothered by something, but he wouldn't tell him what. Well, the next day, he sat there and he told his friends what had happened. And Teemu, I saw you out on the balcony. You didn't look too good. You were actually making me sick to my stomach because I realized you weren't human. He's like, what? And your jaw started to fall off. He told him this whole story about what happened. And for a while after that, he was very shaken up. This story I found on thinkaboutitducks.com. They got it from Mervi Virtanen. He's a Finland UFOologist. Super interesting story because of what doesn't happen in it. I mean, the stuff that does happen is pretty fascinating as well. But what I think is interesting is this whole idea. So, Is Pekka an alien himself? Is he a victim of alien abduction? Which you wouldn't have any memories, definitely, of that. There's more people who are abducted by aliens who have no memory of it than those that are abducted and... Because even they generally have to go. It doesn't, not all the time, but most alien abductees, they don't remember what happened. They may have a brief memory of waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a shadow at the foot of their bed, and then they just wake up and it's the morning, and then they go about their day. They may begin to experience other things that make them go to a hypnotist who can put them under and find their blocked memories. That's like the main way we find out about UFO abductions. There are more people who are abducted and you don't even know it. Because do you go to the hypnotist? How often do you go, man, what happened last night? I better go to a hypnotist and find out. He could be an alien himself. He could be a victim of alien abduction. He could also be the offspring of aliens as well. He could be an alien-human hybrid. But all three of those would classify him as quote-unquote chosen. Because it would separate you from society. It doesn't make you better or worse. It's just different. You know very well who I am, Pekka. It could have been an alien who had been around during Pekka's abductions before. It could have been Pekka's dad. Like an alien-human hybrid. You also wonder, like, how many alien-human hybrids are out there. This is just off the top of my head. I don't have really much to support this. I would imagine the amount is very, very small when compared against the global population. But even then, if it was 0.01%, it's probably even smaller than that. A human hybrid, I have nothing to back that up. It could actually be much larger than that. It could be 20% for all I know. You figure, though, if you abducted somebody, if you did an alien hybrid program in the 60s, and then that person came back to Earth, and then those kids were on Earth and they weren't looking like gray alien hybrids, they looked at least fairly human, they'd be having kids by now with other humans, and it would start changing a bit of the DNA. Again, minuscule population are like that, but it's interesting, though. You know, he's being told that he's chosen, that he knows who they are. We see that a lot in UFO stories. I'll see if I can find some episode in the show notes, because I know we've covered it a couple times, but that happens, where the aliens will go. That was that episode where that woman was trying to... She could tell aliens were coming. She didn't know exactly what it was, but there was a bright light outside of her house. She was freaking out. She was running around. When she got to the kitchen door, she got slammed. The door slammed open and threw her back. And then she saw these little hands kind of reach in from around the door. And she heard a voice saying, "You know better than to resist us." Which would imply multiple abductions. That we come across stories like that every so often. It's pretty bold for an alien to appear as the person in the house who technically could also want to smoke and walk right out. I do find it very interesting, that exchange. Those are direct quotes from the story. "You are one of us, Pekka. You are chosen. Why me? You are a good man." And then when Pekka goes to leave, the next question I think is very telling. He didn't ask any more personal information where he was told you are a good man. He didn't ask, like, how do you know me or why are you here? The next question is almost familial, right? It's something you would ask somebody. It just kind of sidestep all of the personal stuff. The question, how long did the journey last? That honestly wouldn't be if an alien claimed that if an alien showed up and disguised himself as one of my friends, started talking to me, the timetable it took for him to travel from point A to point B, it really wouldn't be on my mind. That wouldn't be one of my top 10 or top 50 questions, especially if I thought you were trying to fool me. But for him to ask how long did the journey last, again, makes me think that they've had this conversation multiple times, because it's such a mundane question. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. But that's the way that it's just such a weird shift. It's like, oh, I'm a great guy. Oh yeah, so how's the weather like on Reticuli 8? It's such kind of a a normal question. How long did the journey last? And he said 11 months. So it made me think that at that point, Pekka subconsciously was remembering certain things about previous encounters with this clone. Or whatever it was. This alien shapeshifted but couldn't get it just right. Very interesting story. I know that there is a weird thing, and we see it in the paranormal community too. We've kind of been talking about it this week, but it's with UFOs as well. There are people who want to meet aliens. They really want to meet aliens. Some people just want proof of aliens. They want to be able to prove it to other people. Some people want disclosure because they just want the knowledge to get out there. There are some people who have a personal desire to meet aliens. And then there are people who get abducted by aliens. And they're like, you don't want to meet aliens, bro. You don't want to meet aliens. Trust me, it's not that great. It's really not that good. I mean, listen, if you want a bunch of kids that you don't have to pay child support for, and they'll pop up every once in a while and go, hey, daddy, as they're wearing some sort of oxygen mask because their lungs can't breathe human air, then yeah, go nuts. But if you don't want that, stay away from aliens. I always think that's very interesting. We see it in the paranormal world. We see it in the UFO world. I understand Bigfoot hunters wanting to see Bigfoot. I totally get that. They want confirmation and they want to see this mighty creature. I don't think you can really go wrong. I mean, Bigfoot's not super hostile. However, all of our Bigfoot stories are survivor stories. For all we know, Bigfoot could 100% be behind missing 411. Could be a bloodthirsty killer. But we only hear the stories of Bigfoot. Me, Bigfoot, leave you gift. Broken acorn. Bye, humans. You're like, why is it all covered in blood? Bigfoot's like, oh, me stub toe when I pick up pine cone. So, yeah, but people wanting to meet aliens, they think of interactions like this. And it would make you feel like, I mean, who doesn't want to have an alien show up and say, you're different, you're chosen? I think that's fair. I think that you could have an alien show up and say that you're special. And that would probably make you feel good. I think when anyone tells you that you're special or you're one of a kind, that can make you feel good. But what happens when aliens do select you, do say you are special, and we're actually going to make you special? We're going to make sure everybody knows how special you are. Pekka just got an odd experience that kind of rattled him for a while, because it is truly inhuman. Like, what was this thing? Alien, but why? And have they met before? Will they meet again? It's all there's kind of ominous underneath it all. Ipsy, I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter copter. We are leaving behind Finland. Fly us all the way out to Tennessee. We're headed out to 10 Mile, Tennessee, January 2024. Very recent story here. We're about to meet this young man. We don't have his real name. We're going to call him Clark. He's sleeping on his couch one night, and he begins to have a dream. A lot of alien encounters start this way, and you just dismiss it as a dream, unless you went and got hypnotic regression. He's having this dream where he floats out of his house and begins floating up towards a spaceship that he said looked a lot like the Millennium Falcon. He floats inside. Jason, this is clearly a guy's dream. That's a fictional ship. I do wonder, wouldn't it behoove aliens to disguise themselves as beloved characters? Because they can disguise themselves. And not all of them, I guess, but that last dude did. And aliens have worn holograms before. Definitely, you could buy a costume, right? You could be like, okay, guys, we're going to abduct some humans. Let's dress up as Care Bears. So you have these gray aliens walking around. They're like, Care Bears, all love and family. As they're drilling into your eyeballs, you're all, your corneas are shooting up, blood everywhere. But you hear that beautiful sound, Care-a-Lot cousins and Care Bears too. They're singing. They could dress up as fictional characters. You get abducted on a spaceship, and all of a sudden Chewbacca's there. And you're like, before that, I don't remember Chewbacca being 4 feet tall and having a giant head bulging out of his body where the chest should be. This is weird. But yeah, sure, you're Chewbacca, and he's like, yes, I am Chewbacca. You're like, that's not what Chewbacca sounds like. He's like, "Arr, arr." Okay, that sounds better. And then Alien comes walking in dressed up like Han Solo, and he's like, you are going to be the person who helps us fight the Galactic Rebellion against the Empire. Punch it, Chewie. And the spaceship goes flying off, and they give you this beautiful, like, it's like Total Recall, where you're actually on this space adventure where you're fighting stormtroopers, and you're, like, stepping on Darth Vader's toes, and he's like, oh, I didn't expect that. And you're pushing him over, and come on, Han Solo and Chewbacca, run. And you save the day. What they really did was they were pulling out your organs and steadying them, and then they removed a bunch of your sperm. You're like, I was wondering... That part was weird. When Darth Vader took me into that torture room and goes, oh, yes, now I have you. Darth Vader will now remove all of your sperm. You're like, wait, what? I don't remember this part of the movie. So he's like, it was cut out. That was George Lucas's secret. Only he could watch this part of the movie. But now you will experience it in 4D. Now you're going to have a bunch of hybrid children, and then they drop you back off on Earth. Put your organs back in first, they drop you back off on Earth. And then you wake up and you're like, dude, that was an awesome dream. I dreamt that I was a hero of the rebellion. I was running around doing all the Star Wars stuff. And then one extra thing that I will never reveal to the public, me and Darth Vader had quite the night. It would make... I would do that if I was an alien. I would dress up as characters. Because it also, I will say, if you're just kidnapping people on Earth, you might want to try that. You might want to get... Instead of wearing, like, ski masks, dress up as the Star Wars guys. You're like, you're clearly not Han Solo. He has a fake mustache. He doesn't even have a mustache. Why do you have that on? Get in the van. Get in the van. This is a shuttle. We're headed off to the Millennium Falcon. They tie you up and they take you to their headquarters. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I can't resist too much. There's Luke Skywalker over there. There's Luke Skywalker sitting over there with an Uzi, smoking a joint. It probably would throw you off a little bit if you were getting kidnapped by the get-along gang, as opposed to a real gang. Giant moose thrown in the back of a vehicle. Well, anyways, he's being abducted. He's taken up into a ship that looks like the Millennium Falcon. Then he floats inside of it. The next thing he knows, he's laying on a cold metal slab. Everything goes black. And then he wakes up on the couch. And he's like, oh, dude, that was a crazy dream. I flew aboard the dollar store version of the Millennium Falcon. The aliens hear that. They're like, what? It took us eons to be able to build such a craft. You guys don't have any interstellar travel. Why is he calling us the dollar store Millennium Falcon? He wakes up and he goes, wow, what a crazy dream. And then he realizes he's burning up. He has a scorching fever. He's just sweating profusely. He also realizes that he has these burn marks. He has 11 burn marks on his right side, right where his ribcage are. He said they look like cigarette burns in the shape of an X, with some of them going off in different directions. He had these 11 burn marks, made this kind of symbol. For the next 2 weeks, Clark's really sick. And then eventually the sickness goes away, but he becomes, this is probably one of my favorite descriptors, Clark becomes what he calls, quote, somewhat deranged, unquote. So not a complete lunatic, just kind of. He's somewhat deranged. He says he feels like the aliens removed something from his brain. So I imagine he's just like going into work and he's like, he's sitting there. He's been off. He called in for 2 weeks. He's been so sick. They're all, Clark, good to have you back. Can you have these reports on the Peterson account ready? And he's like, yeah, I can totally do that. And they're like, okay, you're acting like a weirdo. You're kind of acting deranged. He's just standing there in the corner, perfectly still. Put the papers on the desk. Okay, Clark. He's gone nuts within the past 2 weeks. Imagine one of your coworkers calls in for 2 weeks. I'm sick. You're like, oh, I hope everything's okay with Clark. And then when he comes back, he's a raving lunatic. You're like, oh, man. Now I'm kind of hoping that he calls in sick again. I'm a little scared. This workplace has become hostile. He's somewhat deranged. And now he realizes what is going on. The deranging part ended. He's no longer deranged, somewhat or otherwise. Now, Clark has made sense of everything. The aliens, they did take something out of his brain, but they put in, to replace it, an alien source soul. Which has given him, there's no other way to describe it than superpowers. If this story is real, if this story coming from a deranged man is real, who possibly had a fever that cooked his brain, hopefully not. If this story is real, he would be nothing less than a demigod. So let's take a look at these host of powers that Clark says that he has. One, he has telepathy, which I think is kind of the go-to power that, yeah, everyone would like to fly until you think about, hitting a bird at 32,000 feet. You're flying around. Well, just being 32,000 feet up in the air, you're going to freeze. It's super cold. And then you hit a duck. You're flying around. You hit a duck, hits you in the face. Your eyes get ripped out. Your nose is busted. You plummet to earth and die. Not a great thing. You have to be invincible to really enjoy the pleasure of flying around. So some people will choose invincibility, and that's not bad. People are beating you up all day long with bats. You're like, but if you have a pain fetish, if you're a masochist, you're like, oh no, I can no longer feel pain. You're walking through the fire all slow. You're like, why has God cursed me? Bad guys are shooting bullets at you. No! I want the hurt. It makes me feel alive. Super strength would be great, but you'd have to pair it up with invincibility, because you could pick a car up, sure. But then what are you going to do? It will help you. Maybe you're a firefighter and you're like, oh, there's a burning house. You just pick the house up and move it, and the baby's just like sitting there in midair, then falls, and someone catches it, obviously. But if you were trying to fight crime and you picked up a car, they're just going to shoot you in the stomach, right? You're completely exposed. You're like, stop, evildoers. Before you can even show them how strong you really are, they'll just fire multiple rounds at your body. You're like, oh, I wish I was invincible. And the masochist is like, no, you don't. He's all trying to rub up against you. I want to feel your pain, man. Telepathy would be a good one, but here's the catch. You want to be able to read other people's thoughts. You don't want another telepath around you. That's his problem. He can read people's minds, but they can read his. So that would suck, especially if you were very recently deranged. Probably not a good combo. People are like, are you really thinking about breaking my skull open with cinder blocks after work? He's like, what? Me? Is all these cinder blocks? He just ordered these new cinder blocks from Amazon Prime. He's like, what? No. Me? I'm not going to smash anyone's head open. People can read his thoughts as well. He also, so that's kind of a big trade-off. I wouldn't want to read other people's thoughts if they could read my thoughts. He also, though, has the ability to affect massive changes on the planet. This is what I'm talking about being a demigod. Clark goes, anyone in any real position of power, be it a president, a dictator, prime minister, military general, what have you, I'm in control. Everything that happens because of me. I control everything. So, I control everything. And you're watching the news. You're like, bro, what? This is chaos. He's like, listen, I just recently got these powers, okay? It had nothing to do with Russia invading Ukraine. I had nothing to do with October 7th. I don't got nothing to do with anything. I have the powers now. I could stop everything, but anything that happened before I got the powers in January 2024, I am not liable for. You're like, okay, it gives you a little bit of an out, but if China invades Taiwan, I know who I'm going to blame. He says I have the power over all of these rulers. And I can control the weather. With just the thought, you want it to rain? Rain. Ooh, you like a little lightning with that? How about snow? Also, his teeth are rotting out, by the way. His teeth, he's like, okay, I got all those powers. As you're listening to this story, you're like, that's real interesting, Clark. You're covering your nose, you're all, wow, superpowers, eh? Okay. And you're not to blame for any of the current conflicts that are going on in multiple places. No, none of those. His teeth are rotting out. So that is, I mean, you do have the ability to call for world peace immediately. You could stop every single conflict in its tracks. You could change the global order. But your teeth are falling out. He's like, but I have no control over a dentist. He's walking to the dentist, he's like, fix my teeth. And they're like, what? No. I mean, we'll do it if you pay us. He makes it rain on the dentist's office. Dentist's like, oh no, rain, I'm made of sugar. He runs inside, all of his teeth are rotting out. You might take that, right? I think I could probably just be like, President Biden, give me money, and then I'll get some new teeth. They signed a spending bill for $2,000. They're like, what? Who is Clark? Why are they sending $2,000 out to Tennessee? Veto it. People are trying to get it taken away from me. I only get half my teeth fixed. I'm like, no, I don't have any control over senators, only presidents. Damn you, checks and balances. His teeth are rotting out. He can control the military. He can control the world leaders. He has telepathy. He can read people's minds, and they can read his minds. And he also says that the aliens who have given him these powers do have one power over him. They can turn him into, or technically his personality can be swapped out with, he said, various people on TV. I don't know if it's like real people or fictional people. That's a pretty big difference. If you're hanging out with someone, he starts walking around and he's like, yes, gotta do it, everybody. Making deals. And you're like, huh, what? And he's like, I'm just like that guy from Shark Tank. You're like, okay, whatever, buddy. This guy's been deranged for months at this point. But at least now he's the guy from Shark Tank. He's dressed up. He's not smiling too much because all of his teeth are gone, but, he's walking around. He's making deals. What if, though, he was getting, he was sitting there and he's like, oh, the world is in the palm of my hand. I can have world peace in a second, or I can cause global chaos. And then he's like, did I do that? Oh, somebody got any cheese? And they turn him into Steve Urkel. And he's walking around. I would honestly love to work at this workplace. I don't know if he has a job, but if he did, imagine having a coworker, every time he showed up for work, you didn't know what was going to happen, right? I'm hoping he doesn't work in a steel mill or some big factory. People are constantly getting crushed. He's all, did I do that? They're like, yes, Clark. Yes, you clearly did that. Oh, has anyone got any cheese? They, put different personalities in him. I don't know if they're fictional personalities. I don't know if the aliens are just messing with this guy. All of a sudden he walks in one day and he's like, look at me, everybody. I'm that guy, young Sheldon. What? Young Sheldon doesn't talk like that. He's a 10-year-old boy. Look at me. I'm young Sheldon, everybody. I'm super smart. Bazinga. Fascinating. The best workplace to ever work for. I think they should install webcams so we can watch this. We can pay. You don't know. One day he's Walter White. Next day he's Rainbow Bright. How could you not want to work in a place? Again, it would depend on how unsafe it was. You're like, this is super dangerous. There's this guy. He's dancing on top of a steel girder. He's at a construction site. He's like, look at me. I'm Rainbow Bright. Making rainbows appear. And he actually does it because he controls the weather. That's the problem. You're like, it is insane what he's doing, but every so often a rainbow shows up and he slides down the rainbow. He actually does have some powers. He can control the weather. We haven't had a rainy day at this construction site since he started working here. However, sometimes he shows up and he's a fictional character. And sometimes we don't even get the reference. Sometimes he walks in, he's like, look at me, everybody. I'm Madman. I'm the guy from Mad Men. Ooh, he's like, I don't know. I never watched that show, The Aliens. Or I'll make him act like an ad salesman. He's like, look at me, I'm Mad Men. That's the guy's name, right? Mad Men. Here's the thing. As much fun as we've had with this story, and I do find it quite fun, I wonder, a lot of this stuff makes it seem like, listen, I'm no expert on mental illness by any stretch of the imagination, but that's kind of what this sounds like. The delusions of grandeur, right? Believing that you can control everything. Telepathy, quote unquote, hearing voices, believing you know what other people are thinking about you, believing other people can read your thoughts. I mean, that's like old school Cold War insanity. The Soviets can read my thoughts. They got an implant in my tooth. They can read my thoughts. Being able to feel like you can control everything. The personalities shifting one after another. It's like someone has a television remote, but he's the set. Clark goes on to say, it's interesting because, and I don't know if he's mentally ill. I don't know if he actually has powers from an alien. I don't know if he had a fever that actually has caused a bit of brain damage. I don't know. And it's weird because, like on yesterday's episode, it's possible it's all three. You could be mentally ill and have been abducted by aliens and have experienced these things. One doesn't necessarily outweigh the other, but he finishes this off. He says that in his dreams, he has spirits that wait on him 24/7. So when he's dreaming, there's like, I would assume sexy ghosts, because you wouldn't want like Casper floating around or Fatso. You'd want like a sexy ghost, like Slimer, like a curvy ghost like Slimer. He has spirits waiting on him in the dream world. This is so weird. He said in his dreams, he's a genius. He has a 200 IQ. But then he also says, I was getting confused. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, if you're reading something that was written by a man who was at one point recently somewhat deranged, the narrative may not quite make much sense. But from what I gathered, in the dreams, he has an IQ of 200. But in the real world, he was, in high school, the 99th percentile genius. Or a 99th percentile genius in high school. So does he have an IQ of 200 when he's awake, too? First off, I wouldn't brag. I mean, I do a lot of cool stuff in my dreams. I wouldn't put it on my resume. They're like, oh, so you helped the Autobots save the world 3 times? He's a 99th percentile genius, or was a 99th percentile genius in high school. Nowadays, he is a geodesic engineer, and he has changed the planet's energy system. But he says at the same time, I don't know, man. He also says that he's an electrician, a motorcycle mechanic, and a mechanical engineering student. So those things aren't like, hey, listen, man, I'm not an electrician, or I have a lot of respect for mechanics, because I don't have any of those skills. Like, that definitely is a high brain activity, getting in there and wrenching around stuff. I can repair a toilet like nobody's business. But you give me a motor, nah, I'll be like the aliens. Give me the personality of the Fonz, quick! Hey! And I hit the motor and it starts up. You were touching it. Your hands are all I'm like, hey! You got no hands. They're all chopped off by the fan. He ends this narrative. Clark ends this narrative with this sentence. And I think it just kind of wraps it all up. It wraps up season 25. Quote, I sometimes can still use telepathy to communicate with people and they freak out. So I think his telepathic skills have kind of fallen to the wayside. That's a good thing, right? I wouldn't want people reading my mind. But he goes, I sometimes can still use telepathy to communicate with people and they freak out. Which I wonder if that's him looking at somebody and thinking, hello, beautiful. And she's like looking over and she sees this guy just staring at him. She's like, what? And she gets up and she leaves. And he's like, oh, I scared her by thinking how beautiful she was. Well, Care Bears, let's go. He's all dressed like a Care Bear in public. He's like, it's the family thing to do. He's all singing hella loud. People are like, what? Makes a cloud appear. They're like, okay, so I guess he is a Care Bear. He's flying away on a cloud car. I can sometimes still use telepathy to communicate with people, and they freak out. I think they did something to me and used me to reprogram certain other people, and I don't know if it will stop. I think that I need help. unquote. So, this is, again, an interesting story because the two aren't mutually exclusive. He could be having some severe mental health issues, and he also could have been abducted by aliens. If I had to choose between the two, I would lean towards the mental health. Just because, honestly, with the intense fever over the course of weeks, feeling sick, that might have been a physiological thing that actually happened to him, and it cooked part of his brain. And by him saying, I think I need help, that's a great place to start. That's a great place to start. We talk about this on the show. If you think you're being possessed by a demon, if you think spirits are talking to you, it's good to get spiritual help, but it's also good to get medical help. I don't think you should ever just do one, because if you go to the doctor, they're going to say, take these pills, and the voices will go away. And while that might help if you have underlying mental health issues, but there's something paranormal going on, it's not going to help you totally, so you're probably going to stop taking the medicine because it's not taking care of everything. If you go to the spiritual person, spiritual leader, and they tell you there's a spirit attached to you, we can help get that off, and they do, but you still have underlying mental issues that have not been solved. That may have been one of the reasons why these dark entities were attracted in your direction in the first place. You're not getting the full help that you need, and you're leaving yourself open. But what if that helps Clark, but these aliens actually did abduct him, and some of these symptoms are caused by that? And in yesterday's episode, we talked about this, and I go, in a way, that makes it scarier. It makes it easier if it's just aliens or just a mental health issue. It's simpler, it's easier to fix. Mental health issue is probably easier to fix than if the aliens actually did put an alien source soul in your brain. But I think by Clark asking, I think I need help, that's a good place to be, honestly. And to get that help. I think, honestly, if he went to a UFO community, if he joined a forum, or if he met with a UFO group in person, I think they would probably say, hey, buddy, you might have gotten abducted, but I think you might want to go to the doctor as well. Because I think that's kind of where this is at. And there's no shame with going to the doctor and at least seeing what the options are. I know people don't like to take medication, mental health medication, because they feel that it dulls their creativity, it dulls them as a person. That's a personal decision, I think, that a lot of people can make. There are obviously some people who can't make that decision. Like, they actually medically need to be treated. Just like there are some people who say, no, I don't need an exorcism. Blood shooting out everywhere. You're Stanley knee-high in mucus. Exorcism, smeshercism. I don't need an exorcism. Well, you do. You got to drag them out of the mucus, take them down to the diocese, and have them, of course, they're going to say they don't want to be exorcised. But yeah, Clark, that's a good place to be, is to be thinking, I need help. Because if it's a mental health struggle, there's a lot of stuff out there for you. And maybe even a lot of stuff that's not pills. Because I understand people not wanting to take those. I've taken them. I'm not on them now, but I've taken them at different points in my life, and they were okay. But that's a personal decision for a lot of people to make. There's other ways. There's therapy and counseling and all that stuff. But, Clark, we wish you the best. Feels like you do realize you kind of need some help. So I hope that works out. I hope the teeth thing works out, too. Hope you're able to get some new teeth. That is my vacation wish to you. Well, everyone, that's season 25 of Dead Rabbit Radio. We're coming up, what is it, in 2 months? We're going to be at 6 years of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm going to take 2 weeks off, though. I'll be back May 27th, and we'll be gearing up for a 6-year episode, 6-year anniversary episode for Dead Rabbit Radio. We'll probably do a live stream. This time I'll record it with a better mic, so it'll be great on the podcast as well. Good audio quality. Hey, man, I love you guys. I love you guys who have stuck around this long. This is your first episode. Welcome. If this is your last episode, you're like, dude, you went really hard on that Clark guy. Yeah, I'm sorry. But no, I appreciate any of the listening you do. You guys have a great and safe time while I am gone. I'll be back in 2 weeks with brand new episodes. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today. Have else, I will see you